Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well today. I did get the midterm published. It's up and ready to go, so feel free to log on to that. Just be sure to have it completed by November 1st, by the end of the day, I think 11:59 p.m. Again, it is kind of based on the quizzes, and I've got the review ready, but I'll be popping that up here later today as well. I haven't published it yet. But the review basically just goes over a few of the highlights that on the quizzes that most people got wrong. You can probably get most of it just by studying those quizzes, but I did change some of the wording a little bit, so just be sure to pay close attention to that. Anybody have any questions or concerns before we get started?
Which quizzes are those on?
Quizzes 1 through 6.
Okay.
And actually, I say 1 through 6, but the first one was kind of like our syllabus quiz. And I don't think there's like 1 or 2 questions from that, so not much coming from that one. Mostly 2 through 6. I thought James was trying to chime in on Monday before we cut out. So did you have any questions, James? Is there something I missed?
I just kind of have a question about the project. I was just a little confused. So if I'm reading it correctly, we write a report, but we don't have to turn it in, and instead we're making a video?
Okay, yeah, sorry for the confusion on that, and I'll try to also address that this later today, probably this afternoon. What I would like, and yeah, you do not have to turn in the report itself. I suggest doing the report just because you can kind of lay it out in a way that kind of hits all the key points. And then you want to put that into some sort of presentation. And I'm just going to be flexible with that because I know not everybody has, like PowerPoint, for instance, but like Google Slides or something like that. If you wanted to do just a video presentation, that would be fine. Also, I'm going to throw up here kind of an idea. Hopefully this will work out for you guys, but a kind of a narrated presentation if you can. And if you don't have like a microphone at home, you can't record your voice over top of it. Text would be fine, but just so you have a little bit more notes to go along with the presentation. What I'm going to do, and I'll kind of just record this for you guys and show you the process. I'm just going to make like a pre-recorded slideshow over the presentation that I put up. So use like that slideshow as kind of your backbone, the main part of it, but then add some sort of interactive multimedia just to make it a little bit more watchable. So after it's due, basically it'll be like our labs where it will open up for peer review. That's mostly just so everybody can see the work that you guys did and you can kind of share that work. You're not like peer reviewing in terms of like, making any, major comments or criticism or anything like that. Ideally, all of your presentations will be, perfect because you'll follow those guidelines and that checklist. But I'll kind of record that process, me doing that for the example presentation I put up for you guys on eggplant. So I hope that answers your question, James. Does that make it a little bit more clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no problem. All right, anybody else have any other questions or concerns? That's also due November 1st. Just happened to be kind of line up at the same time. Hopefully that doesn't stress you guys out too much here. I know we're a little bit past the midterm already, but anyway, let's go ahead and get back into where we left off on Monday. And we were talking about plant chemistry and metabolism. And I think, again, one of the things here talking about plant chemistry, do we really need to know a whole lot about it in terms of just, if we're going to be growing a crop, some, yes, I think the plant nutrition, but do we really need to know the biological processes? I don't think so. So anyway, again, I'm trying to boil this down to what I think are the most important kind of simple things here. And let's see, are you guys seeing that?
Yes.
PowerPoint pop up? Okay, good. All right, so I don't know if I'm actually where we were left off here. Let me go back a little bit. We were talking about amino acids and essential amino acids. There are 8 of them. I think I ended up on kind of going on a tangent. I think I was going on a tangent here about how my former mentor there was talking about how getting the free amino acids at the same time as getting your vitamins could theoretically be better. Nonetheless, it is important to get those 8 essential amino acids, and really it's important to get all of the amino acids you can. And amino acids are found in plants and animals. I was also thinking about one thing that we mentioned on the cholesterol front, how, cholesterol, you probably hear it, kind of the good and bad cholesterol. A lot of, I guess, nutrition experts kind of looking at which is good for you and which is bad. And it's kind of a toss-up in some ways, I think, in terms of, what really is good or bad. For a long time, there were people saying that it's bad to eat a lot of eggs, for instance. And now they're saying, oh, it's good to eat a lot of eggs, or it's bad to drink a lot of milk. It's good to drink a lot of milk. Part of that, I think, is just the farm lobby and the food industry lobby, trying to say one thing good or bad. I mean, when you look at it kind of just at the bare bones version of nutrition, think about just having everything in moderation. And it's unique to all of us because we all have unique bodies, unique DNA. So it's important to really see a doctor and, have your, blood type broken down and see what kind of nutrition you need in particular. And a good doctor will tell you everything on your blood test and, how your particular DNA responds to particular foods. So just throw that out there. Everybody's different. When we talk about these kind of general prescriptions of, eating so many calories, it's all on this range of, 2,000 to 3,000 calories, depending on your activity, right? Or you want 50 grams of protein just to kind of maintain your body. Ideally, you want 70 grams of protein to build muscle. It depends on what you're doing. Are you a bodybuilder? You're going to need more protein. So I say all that, but this thing here, when we're talking about amino acids and proteins, you do, at the bare minimum, need these 8 essential amino acids so that you can build the proteins that your body needs. And on that note, we'll move on. Oh, yeah, sorry. One more thing on that note, cholesterol, talking about that. Yeah, cholesterol is not necessarily something that your body has to have. And I think I mentioned that cholesterol is not found in, plant products, not found in plants at all. There are different sterols. Cytosterol is found in plants. Cholesterol is found in animal products. But nonetheless, eggs, cheese, milk, whatever, a vegan doesn't eat cholesterol, but can they still survive? Sure, I guess. Anybody know any vegans out there? Are they healthy? Nobody knows.
They think they think they're healthy, but they constantly deal with, they try to hide it, but there's a clear lack of motivation. They seem to always be tired. They admitted to me they have trouble sleeping. I know this is kind of gross, but bowel movements are totally different because your body just at a chemical level isn't designed to be a vegan. maybe you can get away with being a vegetarian, but vegan, I just don't think your body can handle it.
Yeah, that's a good point there. I'm trying to think of any. I don't think I know any vegans anymore. It seems like there was like a trend for a while, and I do know quite a few vegetarians out there, but I don't think I know any that are just straight up vegan. And I
Oh,
think,
I could throw something out there. Steve Jobs, the former head of Apple,
yeah,
when he first started working, I can't remember the company he first was at, but he was on some kind of fruit diet thing. And they said his skin color was different and he smelled different and that kind of stuff, to where the company, they made him work the night shift to keep him away from other people because he would they just couldn't handle him being there.
that's crazy.
Yes, it is.
Well, this kind of goes back, I think, to just our bodies and our adaptations. For most of the time we have been on the planet, we were adapted to hunting and gathering, and in that, you can see in our teeth. We actually have teeth that are for grinding and shredding. So teeth that are designed for eating meat and vegetables. So we kind of need both in our diet. But the James's point there on lack of motivation, trouble getting sleep, I think that's probably related to vitamin B12, which is also mainly derived from animal products. There are a few plant products that you can get B12 from, but I think it's interesting just to look at diets and kind of trends in diets and how how we eat, and because how we eat is also how we interact with the land. And so do you need cholesterol? Maybe not, but would your body prefer cholesterol? Probably. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying that one of the best things that we could do to better our, I guess, environmental issues is to become vegetarians. And I don't know if I agree with that. I think, Einstein, while he was definitely a genius in many respects, he also said that if the honeybees were to vanish, then we would follow within a few years. And I can see where he's going with that, because a lot of our crops are insect pollinated, but actually a good portion of the crops that we get our protein from and the essential amino acids are not insect pollinated, like the legume and grain combination. Grains are all wind pollinated and legumes are all self-pollinated. So do they really need bees? Yeah. Nonetheless, I could talk about this all day, so maybe we should switch back into this discussion on proteins. Or maybe we should talk about one more thing before we move on. Does anybody know any gluten intolerant people?
My son is.
So that's another thing out there that it's one of those things that to some people there's like a trend. I feel like there were a lot of people there for a while. Maybe it's not as big as it was, a few years ago, but all of a sudden there were tons of people that were all of a sudden gluten intolerant. And there is an actual, issue, genetic disorder, celiac disease. Is that what your son has, Tom?
No, he doesn't have celiac disease. I don't know he's been officially diagnosed, but he knows when he eats the stuff, it just tears his stomach up and he's like messed up for the rest of the day.
Right. So there's a lot of different research looking at that, the gluten intolerance and where they think it might come from. But I think it goes back to just everything in moderation, right? If we probably got to the point where there's gluten being added in so many different things that we were just eating tons and tons of it. And then your body develops an allergy from it. I had a friend when I was living in Arizona who was an egg farmer, chicken eggs. He And as a result, he ended up eating like sometimes several dozen eggs a day. And from that, he developed an allergy to eggs. So sometimes overconsumption of one thing can lead to an allergy of it. I should probably shut up though, because I'm not a nutritionist. I just think it's interesting to look at these different diets and how they've kind of changed over time. And so there are definitely real issues there, like with Tom's son, where if he eats, something high in gluten, he's going to get sick from it. But then there are also people just jumping on the bandwagon. I had a couple of friends that were gluten-free vegans, and I'm like, man, how do you eat anything?
Yes. Drink bottled water.
Yeah. All right, so back to our protein discussion. Our essential amino acids are not synthesized by animals or by people. We can only get those from plants or something that eats plants. I think that's where we kind of left off. In terms of eating foods, I just have to go on another little aside here. When I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, I took a break from my studies at Highlands Community College to go hike the AT when I was 20 years old. And I studied up on the edible wild plants a lot and ate a bunch of them, tested over 200 species of plants on my trip hiking from Georgia to Maine. Pretty cool, right? Well, when I got back, I got interviewed by the local newspaper, and I told them that I supplemented my diet with edible wild plants. And I think, that's a neat story, right? Supplement it with edible wild plants, but it's probably a better story if you say subsisted on. So they printed that I subsisted on edible wild plants on my hike, which is definitely impossible. And I say that because I guess it could be possible if you added hunting in there, and you would have to take a lot longer time to do it. I did it in 5 months. And if you're going in like early spring, there's nothing to eat that is dense in calories and protein. We're talking about a lot of, greens, and really there's not many calories in a green. In fact, sometimes they say that you expend more calories in just chewing it than you actually get out of it. So what I do find, though, I've been looking at it for a long time, how could someone potentially subsist off of edible wild plants? I don't think that they could. They would have to hunt or fish as well. But if you were to try that, the closest you could get is through looking at the most nutrient-dense things that you might call superfoods in a way, but the parts of the plant that have the most seeds and most protein, which are, I think I just gave it away. I said the most seeds and the most protein, the most calories and the most protein, and that is in the seeds and also in the roots. So tuberous crops, it's where plants are trying to put their energy. So if it's a perennial plant, a lot of times they might store that energy underground. Otherwise, they're trying to put all of their energy into seed production for annual plants. So seeds and roots are our most nutrient-dense parts of the plant. And sometimes fruits have a fair amount of calories as well, but usually it is the seed itself. So seeds contain various storage protein structures, and that is usually between 5% and up to 25% of the dry weight of a seed. So the seeds that contain these high levels of protein do serve as sources of protein for both animal feeds and human diets. So legumes, of course, get the good marks for having the highest protein, and some nut trees as well have really high levels of protein and calorie-dense foods too. But we also have to look at that balance of the essential amino acids. So that's where we get that whole legume and grain combination. And I think I mentioned this before when we were talking about it in terms of nutrition, but I just think it's really interesting and kind of neat, almost like it was planned, that not only do we have this kind of grain and legume combination providing us the essential amino acids, but if you look at a soil or pasture management standpoint, then generally it's a grain and legume combination that is the healthiest for the soils, because the grains add a lot of organic matter and the legumes add nitrogen to the soil. So it's pretty neat. A lot of cover crops, if you're going to cover an area with cover crops, they suggest having at least one grain and one legume in that combination. Often things like a mix of clover and like winter rye, for instance. So that all goes back to the fact that for plants, we need nitrogen really in the actual chlorophyll molecule itself. We have to have nitrogen in there. Nitrogen to make the proteins, but also to make chlorophyll. And nitrogen is that nutrient that is needed the most by plants in the largest quantity. Also happens to be the most mobile nutrient as well. So it's easily leached from soils, which can be a big problem. Because of that, it is often deficient in just your typical kind of average soil, unless it's been fallow for many years. If you've grown a crop there once, then that's usually enough to make nitrogen deficient. Or really, even in that same season, the plant will use enough nitrogen to deplete it, and you have to put more nitrogen in by supplying it through some form of fertilizer. So that actually gets into the fact that the nucleotides and the nucleic acids themselves also have nitrogen in it. And one of the things that we see in plants that don't have enough nitrogen, they start to develop what they call chlorosis. And it's almost like Steve Jobs' skin there. It turns like a paler, kind of like a yellow color if you don't have that. And that goes back to nitrogen being in the chlorophyll molecule. It'll look yellow if it doesn't have enough nitrogen. So nitrogen in our chlorophyll and in our DNA and in our proteins. So we talk about the DNA aspect, the nucleic acids. We look at the organic bases and the base pairs, which are important to the metabolism of the plant, just through basically coding for the different proteins that you need. So we've got purine, adenine, pyrimidine, and cytosine as being some of these organic bases that are critical for metabolism. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is one of the most important molecules in all of metabolism, not just in plants, but in people as well, all animals. And that's due to the energy stored in the bonds with the phosphate groups. So basically it's used as an energy transfer molecule. So it's what is kind of triggering the metabolism in really all living things. So energy is stored in these bonds, and then when the bonds are broken, then it's able to yield energy. That released energy then provides the needed energy for all the other biochemical reactions. So we create energy, but then we're just moving it throughout plants, throughout people, throughout all living things, really moving that energy into the different forms just to maintain. It's really fascinating how much, I guess, biochemistry goes into just our daily life, just breathing. There's so many different reactions going on, or for a plant to, respire and release carbon dioxide. There's just so many different, these chains of biochemical reactions taking place. And a lot of that energy transport is going through this ATP. Another important role of the organic bases is their function in the nucleic acids. So nucleic acids being important for DNA and RNA. So first we have RNA, which is this chain-like molecule that has a ribose and phosphate background. And RNA just stands for ribonucleic acid, and here it is kind of in this chain-like configuration. And in DNA, we have one of the 4 organic bases being attached to each ribose. So it's adenine, guanine, thymidine, and cytosine, or as you've probably seen it coded for the base pairs, you just use A, G, T, and C. These long chains of molecules are making up the chromosomes that are in the nucleus of a cell, which carries the genetic information, which is basically translated to create the proteins that build and maintain the organism and all of its functions. So it all kind of boils down to this, the use of our DNA, which codes for everything every function that we do and every function that plants do. And just slight changes in the DNA can lead to big changes on the organism level. Let's talk for a second here about the secondary products, which are not part of the main process of the metabolism in plants, but there are some, I guess, medicinal and other uses for these secondary compounds. They're often produced as kind of part of the metabolism, or in some cases they are produced to kind of be like a protectant for the plant, a way to repel pests. But animals cannot synthesize these compounds, but often some organisms, especially humans, are using these secondary compounds created as a byproduct for a wide variety of uses. So most of these are for either medicinal or kind of recreational drugs. And I would just say in this case, the difference here between poison and a medicine is just the dose, right? So the difference between using it and abusing it. So there's a whole class of chemicals, the cannabidiols, that are actually produced naturally in animals, but also in several species of plants. And these are getting a lot of attention these days for their potential medicinal use, as well as the recreational use as it becomes more or less legal in different parts of the country. But this whole class of chemicals, it's not just in the cannabis plant, even though that's kind of where it gets its name. They actually say that they find these also in like the chocolate plant, the cacao as well. But tetrahydrocannabinol and cannabidiol, THC and CBD are 2 of those secondary products. And I think probably at the time that this book was first published, nobody really knew what CBD was or what it did. But now you can get it like at any service station, any gas station. It's kind of crazy how big that has, been a change. And I just want to throw this out there while we're talking about this, because we've seen a lot of interest and activity in the hemp industry in our part of Virginia. And you guys, is there much going on in your part of Virginia there with it?
Not yet. There's some people that are exploring it, but they're running into finding some of the speed bumps and hurdles that's kind of slowed them down a little bit.
I know there's some people right outside of Fort Pickett in Nottoway, and he grows hemp every single year, and he's gotten consistently bigger and bigger.
So I think it is definitely a potential, cash crop. But I think people were saying for a while, oh, it's going to replace tobacco as, the greatest cash crop we had. But I don't think personally, I don't think that's the case. Just because there's not quite as much there's more people interested in growing it. Probably much more supply than there really is demand. As you can see, again, all these CBD shops opening up, and I think it'll be kind of a boom and bust personally, until we finally, figure out how to use it properly. Well, so talking about, hemp, there's many uses for it, of course, for the fiber, as well as for, extracting the CBD. And just recently in Virginia, we had, they changed the laws to allow the use of THC for medicinal uses as well. So there are, I guess, 5 health service areas in the Commonwealth, and each one of those health service areas were allowed to have one vertically integrated processor where they could basically grow it, extract it, and prescribe it all in the same place. And the first one actually just opened down here in Bristol, Dharma Pharmaceuticals. And so they're actually growing plants that have both THC and CBD, and they're extracting it and selling it as the medicinal form. And I think that's probably where most of the money is. The research suggests that plants that are grown just for CBD, if they don't have some balance of THC and CBD in it, it's not as good for medicinal uses. All right, so I have to throw that out there because I'm currently developing a course for this topics in hemp cultivation. And again, I think a lot of people are getting into it just because they think it could be a potential cash crop. However, it's just not, I don't think it's yet the best cash crop. It's not going to be tobacco yet. I say that, and yet at the same time, right across the road from community college, Virginia Highlands, there is a huge range of greenhouses that it was a Bonnie Plants facility for a long time, and now it's full of hemp. So somebody's growing it, and I imagine that, I mean, that's like a multi-million-dollar facility right there. I imagine that there's got to be some money in it, or else they wouldn't be doing it, right? All right, well, let's get off of the hemp train here and talk about some of these other secondary products. Some that I'm sure that we're familiar with, at least hearing stories in the news, if not, if you don't have a personal relation to someone that has been addicted to opiate-based drugs. Morphine, which really is not, that's the alkaloid that is synthesized, but it's originally coming from the opium poppy, Papaver somniferum, which this, actually a lot of different poppies. We grow ornamental poppies that you can actually extract the opium from. It is a very important painkiller, but it's also extremely addictive too. So again, the difference between the medicine and the poison is the dose and how long that dose, I guess, continues for. So it's a scourge on our country, especially in rural areas. And there was a story that came out fairly recently on, I think it was in USA Today about Norton, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes from us over here in the kind of southwest corner. And they had one of the highest rates of, I guess, opioid abuse in the country. And it's pretty sad, really. I mean, I think a lot of people, and especially in Norton, a lot of people used to work in the coal mines and probably had a lot of physical injuries from that, and then got prescribed these painkillers, and then they got addicted to them. But it all comes from this one plant. And while it could be grown in Virginia, I think it's actually illegal to grow or extract opium, of course, from a poppy, but it's mostly produced in the Middle East. So they actually saw huge increases of the production of, I guess, really heroin coming from the opium poppy in places like Afghanistan and, well, I guess Afghanistan's really the big one, maybe in Iraq too. James, I bet you probably got something you want to chime in on that.
I mean, yeah, basically, if you really want to know how the Taliban, ISIS, all the rest of them really fund their operation, at the end of the day, it really does boil down to this just one plant more than absolutely anything. And they fight amongst themselves over this. But the people in the area, they all grow it because for them, it's the way to stay alive and also make a little bit of money. So it's just a constant thing. You'll see them all kinds. If you go back and look throughout Time magazine and everything else, you'll see so many pictures and videos of American soldiers, running through fields of these plants or trying to burn them, whatever else. So it really is this one plant is what's funding terrorism in the entire world. It's pretty incredible.
It's crazy that one plant could do that. But, an addictive drug, you get an addictive secondary product, an alkaloid from this one plant, and then get it to the people, which I mean, if you've known someone that has been addicted to any of the opiate products, it's incredibly difficult for them to break that addiction. So not to get too depressing on you guys, just to think about how in some cases agriculture can lead to some negative side effects, which another one here, cocaine produced from the coca plant, which comes from the Andes, South America, which again is harmless in small doses, but when it's concentrated and synthesized, then it becomes strongly addictive and dangerous. And I think maybe cocaine probably was a very popular drug, and maybe it still is, I don't know, but it seems like it's kind of been overshadowed by the opiate products. But if you just think about, for instance, in Mexico, we'll throw this out there, like Juarez, Mexico, which is pretty close to the border there. If you think about the living wage there, and then you think about how much a kilo of cocaine goes for just on the other side of the border, no wonder why people are trying to smuggle drugs into the country, because they can make so much more money than they can do any kind of honest labor in Mexico. So anyway, I say that, but in the Andes, if you land in Peru and you go to Machu Picchu, they will give you a coca leaf tea to help you adapt to the increase in altitude. So again, there are medicinal uses, and once you abuse it, though, it becomes dangerous. It becomes poison. Same with most natural substances. All right, so look at the kind of what gets the bad guys, right? THC and morphine and cocaine, we think of as often being bad because they're illegal, right? Felony charges coming with those drugs. how about a couple of the ones that we might use on a daily basis? Nicotine, of course, coming from tobacco, also toxic when consumed in large quantities. Does it have some medicinal effects? Sure. My grandmother used to always say, I'll put some chewing tobacco on it. That was like her cure-all for pretty much everything. You got bit by something, throw some backer on there. So anyway, nicotine, also very addictive, but it's a secondary product that doesn't get nearly as, well, I guess it doesn't get as much attention as it used to. But we were talking early on about how tobacco was the #1 cash crop for an alkaloid, for a secondary product, for nicotine, which at the same time is also was used, and probably still is in some cases, as a pesticide. Caffeine, on the other hand, of course, coming from the coffee plant, and also the tea plant. I guess there are a few different plants that produce caffeine. We actually have a native holly, the Yalpan holly, which produces some caffeine as well. Either way, caffeine, another drug, right? It's another alkaloid. All these are just secondary products that are created, not used in the metabolism of the plant, but created as a secondary product through the metabolism of the plant. And I think just probably the 4 plus, we look at the cannabis, those 5 plants account for way more money than any of our other crops, plant crops that we grow. I guess, you might argue that corn, soy, and wheat might have, it's probably pretty close. Compare, these 5 or 6 plants to the 3 or 4 heavily commodified crops. It's interesting, but that's kind of just how it plays out. What are we, willing to spend money on, and how much money are we willing to spend on it? Of course, not that I think that there's anything wrong with, using caffeine, and I'm not a heavy caffeine user, but so I don't know for sure, but can you guys think of any bad side effects of using too much caffeine?
Long term, it can raise your blood pressure. I guess if you take an absolute ridiculous amount, like I've seen there's cases of like weightlifters taking too much pre-workout and mixing it with like 3 Bang energy drinks and basically just about putting themselves into cardiac arrest.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess all of these, any stimulant, caffeine or cocaine, or nicotine, they could have negative effects to your, your heart. So, well, again, just throw out there, these alkaloids, these secondary products are, they have some positive benefits, but they also have a lot of negative side effects. Both kind of in the physical world, the physical realm on your body, but also in the kind of socioeconomics of it. Talking about the opium poppy, leading to terrorism. It's a crazy thing that plants can be linked to these issues, but it's absolutely true. Okay, so most of these alkaloids actually are formed from some sort of precursor upon wounding of the plant itself. And most of them have a bitter taste and will act as a deterrent or a protective chemical for that plant. So it's believed, kind of thinking about the evolution of the plants, they evolved creating these secondary products, mostly due to adaptations for something trying to eat them. So most of them don't taste very good, but they have these, in some cases, strange effects to people and to other animals as well. Another type of secondary compounds that is different than from the alkaloids are the phenolics. And They call them phenolics because of this phenol molecule. It's usually in some form inside of these compounds. And probably the most important one that we look at in plants is lignin, which is the most abundant compound, at least in woody plants, after cellulose. So pretty much, I mean, all of our woody plants have lignin in them, and some of our herbaceous plants do too. But it's giving the plant some rigidity and the strength to basically hold up. And again, in some cases, we use this for, you know, profit. I mean, we in the timber industry, lignin is extremely important. So they've actually tried to research different ways of increasing lignin production to make stronger woods. Okay, another important type of phenol, the flavonoids, which act as pigments, mostly in flowers, and to attract insects and birds, pollinators mostly. So in the case here, looking at this daisy-like flower, on the left, we have, you know, kind of a regular film picture of it, and this is kind of what we would see. But on the right is an image taken with film that is sensitive to UV light. So these pigments absorb UV light, and then a lot of animals actually see in UV ranges, like especially the birds and the bees. So it helps to guide those animals, those pollinators, to the center of the plant, so that they're more likely to pollinate it. And kind of what we're thinking about, the phenolics and this next class, the terpenoids or terpenes, these are being studied more and more for their medicinal uses as well. So terpenoids are the largest of all the classes of the secondary metabolites, and all of them are polymers that are basically just different sequences of this hydrocarbon. And a hydrocarbon is kind of similar to a carbohydrate, except it's just a long chain of carbon and hydrogen bonded together, and not oxygen. So in this case, isoprene is, you know, kind of the base of most of these terpenoids. So a couple that we look at as being important in plants, but also they're finding medicinally, but also nutritionally. And I guess the two are not mutually exclusive there. You kind of have food and medicine, right? They're kind of in sync. Let food be thy medicine. But in one of the cases, the carotenoids, like in carrots, beta carotene, causes the yellow and orange pigments. And they have found, scientists found that those are really good for your eyes. These pigments also serve as a protective role in the chloroplasts. And right now, we're seeing those as being important for the colors in autumn, as plants begin to, the woody plants, trees begin to senesce and drop their leaves. The chlorophyll dyes, they reveal the chloroplasts and the pigments that are in these terpenes. The terpenes also play a role in plant protection, so they tend to exude from plants that are damaged by pests. They also think that in some cases they're using some of these terpenes and flavonoids as a way to communicate amongst plants. So for instance, say that you got an oak grove somewhere, and there's an infestation of like the tent caterpillar. When that caterpillar feeds on the leaves, they will release these terpenes and flavonoids, for one, probably for their own defense, but it also triggers the trees around them to go ahead and start producing these terpenes and flavonoids to try to, I guess, reduce the effect. So they think that they might be involved in the plants actually communicating too. And that does it for our first discussion here on plant chemistry. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, anything else you want to add or take away from that discussion? I think there's lots of neat stuff, when we're talking about plant chemistry. I mean, just biochemistry in general. I wish I knew more about it. We'll talk more about this here in a couple of chapters when we get back into more about the photosynthesis of plants, and again talking about that chemistry aspect, but we'll kind of make it simple and easy for you all to understand. All right, well, hope you all did well on your test on Monday.
They did.
Good. I guess we'll go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you all on Monday.
Okay, bye everybody. See y'all in a couple minutes.
Get out and enjoy the leaf color.
Yes.